Brother, we are live. I am excited to have and honored to have my guest on. I'm going to let him introduce himself as we talk about confessions of a former terrible teacher. Brother, go ahead and introduce yourself for those who are not in touch with your genius yet. Tell people who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Oh man, that's me. I'm Daryl Williams Jr. And I'm gonna start with why I do it first. I was a
Okay.
former terrible teacher. I struggled so much. I struggled so much as a terrible teacher, and now I help new teachers have a big impact on student achievement data without burning out, without feeling unsupported, and without changing who they are. Why? Because those were some of the biggest things that plagued me. The feeling of burnout, like I'm doing this work and like not being successful. I'm just stressed and overwhelmed. The feeling that I did not have the support from people on my hallway, administrators, I'm not understanding how to navigate that world, and feeling like I was who I am not adequate and had to change who I was in order to be effective. And I realized that that was not the case. So now I help other people shorten that journey of to transition from terrible teachers to two-time teachers of the year. Well, I was a terrible teacher that transformed to a two-time teacher of the year, and I help other people with that journey as well.
To name or to call yourself, even at that point in time, a terrible teacher, I think you have the benefit of hindsight. And then two, you also have to exercise the levels of humility to be able to even
Yeah.
name and say that. Would you have said that at the time? Like, did you know in the moment, like, yo, this is where I'm at?
Yeah, wasn't a secret. No, everybody knew. Everybody knew. I was the teacher on the hallway that the other teachers would have to come down the hall and quiet my class. Like,
Oh
it's still,
man.
yeah, man. Like it traumatizes me to this day. Teachers will come down and like, my students are trying to learn. You guys are entirely too loud, and I'll just be standing at the front, like, yep, y'all heard her. Y'all better be quiet. Like,
Yeah.
I had no control.
Wow. Wow. So um much like yourself, I would say that I was absolutely, I mean, I still apologize to my students who I had my first couple of years.
Yep.
They find you and then you request you and things like that, and they're
Hmm.
grown now and they got their own kids and stuff. But I'm like,
Yeah.
I was like really bad. I was terrible. Like, and I need you to know that I know that now. But like, man, I was
Yeah.
bad.
Where did you start off? Like grade level wise?
So I have been in middle school like the entirety of my career.
Same.
Um, yeah, yeah. I think it takes a special breed, man.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, I saw this meme where it was like your elementary school teachers and they got like the fluorescent pens and all
Yep.
the things, and then like middle school teachers, and it was like this clip of like Leonidas on 300, you know talking about this is Sparta. Like that's kind of, you got to be
Yeah.
special, like a special breed to be in
Yes.
that you know
It's different
um
though. That's what I wanted, which was the crazy thing
okay.
because when I was coming out, I was 21 when I came out of college. I started school early. I finished school on time. I started
Hmm.
school early. Like I started kindergarten when I was 4.
Hmm.
So I graduated, I had just turned 21, and I thought I didn't have the beard yet and stuff like that. My hairline wasn't receding, so I was still looking like a little kid, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, man, I knew I didn't want little kids because that's a different type of energy. But
Right.
and I knew I wanted to do something where I could really help impact somebody's future. Of course, elementary school can, but I wanted to get them when they were making those really tough decisions. So I was thinking high school at first, but I was like, I look like a high schooler. Like I can't go here. So I said, let me
Yeah.
go to middle school. And when I sat down for the interview, my very first principal, he was actually the executive director over both the middle school and the high school. And he was like, we have a high school position and a middle school. Which one do you want? I was like, middle school. He was like, why? Nobody ever chooses middle school. But to your point, I mean, that's where I've been ever since day one.
Yeah. They it is a different, like I said, different breed, because like my middle schoolers, and I'm sure this is across the board, like
Hmm.
sometimes they're like 5-year-olds in big bodies.
Yep.
um and then the other side is like they are childlike in their ability to tell you the truth, but like grown enough to say it in a way that like, oh, Like, and you better have something, lovingly. You better have something to
Mhm.
return. Like you gonna give me some. I'm a return it back to you, right? Like you gotta have that in your toolkit.
Yeah.
But thinking about those first couple years, I I knew math, right? I was a math teacher.
Yo, me
Um,
too. Yeah.
man, hey man, listen, this is like very rare, by the way. Middle school
Word.
math, black male educator. That's
Yeah.
so shout out to you. But so I'm in the classroom and I know what the thing is that I'm trying to teach, but I don't know how to connect to the person.
I get
And
that.
I'm selling a product that no one wants to buy called middle school math.
Mhm.
And so I was I was kind of called into this fixation with certain strategies that were very high control, very little relationship. And so I
Mhm.
became like almost like a tyrant for my kids. Like I was like,
Yeah.
nope,
Yeah.
30 seconds, sit down. Like I was very much
Yeah.
so very high control without anything else on the other side of that.
Yep.
And so when I look back, I did more harm than good, but I got away with it because I looked like the students that I taught.
Mm. And I was gonna say that that was actually my detriment because I
Mm,
thought, similar to what you were just saying, black male educators are rare. Black male educators in mathematics are rare, and I was like, I will connect because I look like my students. So I looked
mhm.
just like them, and I thought that I was gonna come in and just like respect me, guys. Like you, this is what everybody's
Yeah,
saying. We need more black males in education. All right, cool. I'm a black male in education. I should be able to walk in the classroom and just start teaching. And you guys are like, thank you for being black. Like I don't, like, you know what I'm saying?
right,
Like,
right.
but no, that was not the case. So similar to your point, I think it's crazy, and I don't know how deep we want to get into it, but how
Let's
people
go.
come with some of these punitive strategies and like what the origins are, whether I mean similar to it's like prison system, like 30 seconds, sit down. It's like, get up, chow time. You know what I mean? And we're
Yep.
taught those strategies of control because it's harder, it's easier to do that and see a result, and it takes longer to build relationships and make connections and manage that way.
100% to the point where the I was looking back, I could see this in hindsight, right? But
Hmm.
I was seen because of my proximity, because I mirrored my students and things like that. I was seen as almost the answer to the problem of blackness, if that makes sense. I was kind
I
of
mean,
put. So let me tell you this, right?
mhm,
So the narrative or the prevailing thought is because I was teaching kids in Camden, New Jersey, where I started,
uh-huh.
that they were going to be disrespectful, defiant, disruptive, all the stuff that we put into discipline referrals that we can't ever quantify
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
define, like all that stuff, right? And so because that was the default mode of how some of the educators or some of the just prevailing thoughts around the students there,
Hmm.
well, give them to Morgan because Morgan can talk to him. Morgan can do this or Morgan can do that because I look like them,
Right, right,
right?
right.
And so because we weren't there wasn't a sense in which the kids were viewed upon, um, their genius, their that like I don't need to teach them about grit. They could teach me a masterclass in grit. Like I don't, right?
Yeah.
Those things weren't seen. So because they weren't seen, now we are applying this banking model system of education where I have to deposit everything in you and you have nothing to give to the equation, if that
Mm,
makes sense.
mhm.
And so I had to unlearn a lot of that stuff. So all of that to cue up this question for you, if you could go back and if you were giving yourself like, and I've seen the video, so you record yourself, you pop into the classroom. I love these, by the way. I love them. You
Okay.
pop into the classroom and you just like demonstrate in real time the strategy. But let's say
Mhm.
you were walking in and it's not another teacher or another class that you've already no, it's you in the classroom. You're the teacher,
Mm.
right? First year, people are walking down the hallway quiet in your class, but now you are walking down the hallway as the middle school administrator that you are, and you're giving yourself some advice on your prep.
Yeah.
What's the first thing you want to say to yourself and why?
Man, the first thing I'll say to myself is get out. you're not one to teach. Nah, I was nah, I was it. I would have said it. I was because listen, it was he was rough. He was rough.
Yeah.
Nah,
Yeah.
but for real, the first thing I would say to myself is reset, right? Clear expectations and consistent consequences. The reason why I would say that to myself is because I knew who I was and I was trying to build relationships. I just didn't realize, again, how long building relationships was going to take in terms of managing a classroom. So you don't come in on day one and have great relationships and then manage the classroom automatically. So you still need to have clear expectations, right?
Right.
And you still need to have consistent consequences. My son wanted to join the
Yeah.
podcast today, right?
That's all
But
right. That's all right.
so I didn't have clear expectations of what I wanted students to be able to do. Right.
Yeah.
And so since I didn't have clear expectations, students didn't even know like what is it that I'm expected to be doing right now. Like
Yeah.
students have any idea like what is it that I'm expected to be doing right now. So
Yeah.
I gave them a lot of freedom, a lot of flexibility. So I would actually tell myself to start with vision. What is the thing that you want to be true for 100% of students? That's what Dr. Robin Jackson shared, and I thought that was super powerful. And I don't think I had a clear vision of what I wanted to be true for 100% of my students. Now I do. Now I know that I currently want to help students build foundational skills so that they can grow up to create choices, so that they then have the choice to live the life they choose, not the life they're forced to settle for. Now that's the vision that I'm grounded in. So in everything I'm doing, I'm like, how am I helping students build skills? Like you were talking about, that grit, that resilience, that mental toughness, how avoiding learned helplessness. So those are the things. So then I would ask myself, what do students need to be able to do on a consistent basis in order to achieve the vision that I set? Those then become the expectations that I can hold students to. Before I was in there trying to be cool. I was in there just trying to connect with them. Solely building relationships without having expectations, without having a
Yeah.
standard of excellence, and they were falling. Well, I can't even say they were falling short of expectation. There was no expectation for them to have. But then I would consistently consequence, and consequencing doesn't have to be punitive, doesn't have to be kind of what we were describing earlier. But they just need
Yeah.
to know that when I fall short of the expectation, this is a reminder that I'm capable of doing more than I'm doing right now, and that's what consistent consequencing looks like. So that's the first thing I would start off and let him know.
You were, I believe it was yesterday, you were live talking
Mhm.
about you were talking about just what you're talking about now, like building those expectations. You were talking about um it reminded me of an activity that I did with my students for like my last couple years of teaching. When they
Yeah.
first come in, I would ask them, tell me about the world's worst teacher. What do they sound like? What do they
Mhm.
say? What does
Mhm.
the lesson look like? And they could tell you all. The great thing, especially about middle school, is they're gonna tell you what they don't
Oh, they'll
like.
tell you. They'll tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I would use that and flip it and then say, now, if this is what you don't like, if this is what doesn't resonate, tell me what does.
Mhm.
Um, and you'd be surprised how many students will tell you that they won't say it in these words, but they want boundaries and they want expectations and they want to know, like they want to know what that all of that looks like, it feels like,
Yeah.
it sounds like. They want to
Yeah.
experience that every single day. They want the structure, even though they won't put those words on it.
Yeah. Because there's freedom in structure, right?
Yeah.
And what the way I like to describe it is with an example that I give about buying my wife some balloons.
Right.
And man, a lot of people think that when, like I thought my first year teaching, let them be free, let them do their own thing, and kind of, I just need to show up and teach the content, and it'll be better, right? It'll be better if I don't give them structure to confine them. But structure actually creates freedom because, like I was saying, with my wife buying her those balloons, we were in a whole grocery store. My daughter was like, "Let's buy mama a balloon for Mother's Day." I was like, "Go ahead, baby, let's go do it." A1 mommy. And she went. She got the biggest balloon she could find. Like, God had to have been the biggest balloon she could find, and that it was $21.99. And I was like, "Oh,
Mm,
that's not how much I wanted to spend on a balloon." Looked over
yeah.
to the other aisle, had lots of balloons. They were smaller, and I said, "Baby, why don't you go into that aisle and find a balloon?" She went
Yeah.
into that aisle, and then she found a balloon, one that she really liked, brought it to me. The price tag was $4.99. Why? Because
Yeah.
I knew everything in the aisle was a little bit cheaper. So
Yeah.
she still had flexibility. She still had the ability to choose whatever it is that she wanted to. But now she was able to actually convert that to a purchase because she stayed within the confines of the structure. And it's the same things in the classroom. When we provide the confines of the structure, it's not as limiting as we think. What is it saying? This is what is acceptable. And this is what I know is going to help convert to a purchase. It's going to help convert to the desired outcome that I know that you want to achieve. So stay within these confines. Within these confines, do you. Be your unique, right? Be your amazing within these confines. But some of us don't spend enough time putting up those parameters of what the expectations and standards actually are.
It reminds me of like my first few times going bowling, right? And young boy going bowling, like, you know, oh yeah, it's gonna be easy, right? You roll the ball, you hit the pins, right? And
I think so.
but there are these two traps, on the side, called gutters. And I
Yeah.
consistently hit
Come
the
on, man.
gutter, no matter
Consistently.
how consistently hit the gutter when I first started. And so, but when I was younger, what they would do is they take these little, um, they're like big balloons. They would inflate them and they go all the way down the length of the gutter and
Mm,
fill it up. And we know them now as bumpers. And all that did was tell me this is where you're supposed to stay. Don't go outside of this boundary.
for
And
sure.
if I
Yeah.
did go to that boundary, it bounced me back in the position that I was supposed to be in.
Hmm.
And so for me, and similar to the work that you do, a lot of work as a leader, a lot of work in consulting and all the things is to be able to say to teachers, listen, how do we put up the guardrails for our
Yeah.
babies, and how can we restore, redirect, um, and push them into their greatness, into their genius in ways that are gentle, yet still get them to their goal? How do we do that and still hold them accountable? Like, what is that balance like? And so I'm
Yeah.
always trying to push, my staff and folks that I work with to be a warm demander. Like, this is what I need you to do.
Warm
Like,
demander. Yeah.
it's this combination of, like, I need you absolutely to put up what you're talking about, the structures, right? Be free, be your own unique you in this
Yeah. Yeah.
lane.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the same time, I need the warmth to encourage them to keep it going. And
For
how do we
sure.
balance those two things? And so, um, but let me ask you this before we get into that, because I don't want to go too far down that road.
Yeah. Because we'll go there.
Well, yes. Go back for me for a second.
Yeah.
You have the merch. You call yourself a former terrible teacher. Define that for people who are listening. What is a terrible teacher?
A terrible teacher is really not hard to define. I believe that a terrible teacher is one that does not deliver on the promise that was made to students. It was one that does
Mm,
not improve student achievement data. I mean, I think that's it. Our role as educators, I think in a nutshell, is to help improve student achievement data. However you
mm,
quantify data, right?
yeah.
Whether people quantify data in many different ways, but what does student achievement look like? If students haven't grown being under your tutelage, then I feel like that is ineffective. And if you're going to show up and be ineffective, then I consider that to be terrible. There should be some sort of transformation with students. So we should improve student achievement data. Again, you define what that data is, but students should achieve that thing. So terrible teachers, and why I say I was a terrible teacher is because I was not improving student achievement data, whether it was social emotionally. I was not helping their social emotional data improve. I was not helping their academic data improve because I wasn't even growing students, honestly. That first year, they that first year, I think my growth data was negative something. I don't know how deep the listeners are in terms of like data, but you grow on percentage, not percentage point, sorry, you grow on a scale from year to year. And if you increase, it's positive. If you decrease, it's negative, right? So I was like a negative 0.67 growth or something like that. So I wasn't helping students grow academically in math.
Mm,
I wasn't helping them in my brain grow social emotionally. I don't know
mhm,
how well I was doing with them growing in terms of grit resilient mindset. So all the things that I wanted to help students be able to grow in, I wasn't doing that. So since I wasn't meeting that standard of expectation that I have for myself, wasn't able to deliver to the promise on students that I made that I would help them to be better because of my impact, I feel like I was a terrible teacher.
mm. I could hear someone who either is listening to this replay or listening even now say, Well, you know, the data doesn't always tell the whole story, and standardized testing and all the
Hmm.
things, right? So let me put it this way. As educators, there's a habit that I see that I try to shy away from in myself, and I try to push
Hmm.
others to. That is when the data is telling a story that reaffirms my commitment to education, that tells me that I'm a great teacher. I'm quick to shine a light on it. Look at what the data says.
Hmm.
But if the data says a different story, if the data is telling me that there are areas that that I have to improve, it is very easy for us as educators to point away from ourselves to, well, the circumstances in the child's life, the access to the like, we point away from ourselves to all of those other things. And hear me, those things, it's not any less real for those things to actually be a barrier or a hurdle for our students.
Yeah.
But I wonder about the stance of saying, now that that is against me, or saying a different story, pointing to them versus what can I learn, how can I improve, and how can I grow? Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Um, do you see that? One, would you say that at that time for you, as you describe being a terrible teacher, would you say that that was you? Did you point away from yourself, or did you take ownership, accountability, so on and so forth?
No, I took ownership, and I think I might have taken too much ownership to the
Oh,
point
okay.
where, yeah, because I've always been that kind of person. So growing up, I struggled a lot with like fitting in and finding my crew, my people. Academically, though, I was fine. I was straight. I was always an excellent scholar, and things just oftentimes came easy to me.
Mhm.
I've studied. It was a linear outcome. Like I would study and I would do well. I would, you know, learn in school and I perform well on standardized tests, regular tests, formative assessments, summative assessments. I was just an amazing student. I went to school, college, great grades, right? So when I got to actually teaching and I wasn't good at it, it was a new feeling and a new experience for me. So I started really internalizing it probably more than I should. I probably should have given myself some more grace as a first year teacher. And
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm really terrible at this thing. I need to leave because I'm doing such a detriment to students. So I want to say that I didn't give myself enough grace in giving myself time to like learn the curriculum, to understand how to manage a classroom, to learn how to deliver engaging lessons that students actually retain. All the things that I know and teach on now. But in that moment, I was just like, I'm just terrible at this because the data says so, right? Whatever, again, however you quantify data, because standardized assessment, standardized testing is not the only way to quantify data. But however you look at the data, when I looked at it from all different vantage points, I wasn't doing well enough in any area. And I was like, I'm just terrible at this. So yeah, I really took that on myself and said, it's a me thing. I need to get out of here and put a teacher in here that's actually going to help these students.
So you had a video that I saw recently where you were using the analogy of a tree. You were
Mm.
talking about, you know, the tree itself, the branches and the leaves. Could you unpack that for us again? Because I think it lends itself to how we move the conversation forward with regards to transforming from a terrible teacher into one that could potentially be two-time educator of the year, like
Two
yourself.
time. Yeah, but so the example I came,
Let's see if he comes back. If you are live watching, tell me if he is stalled for you as well. Just go ahead and let me know in the chat, and then we'll wait for him to come back. Okay, he is. So while we wait for him to come back, let me say this: part of the work of transforming again in those early years for me as an educator had a lot to do with being honest with myself about the areas and my shortfalls. For one, while I had knowledge of content, I didn't think hard enough about what it's like to be a student who may have had their own ideology regarding what learning, for example, math was going to be like. So, for some students, walking into a math class is traumatic in and of itself. They walk in, they've been here before, they've already told themselves that they can't get math, they don't know math, they don't understand math. And so before you even open your mouth as an educator, they have repeated to themselves who they are and what they can do in your class. And much of the work that I think might get overlooked is is us being in the position of being a healer in that sense. It is helping students to push back the negative ideology they've internalized about themselves and about what they can produce in the classroom. As an educator, you are in the middle of a story that is being written, that's being written about that student, and that student is writing about themselves. So you could be the best educator in the world. You could have all the best intentions. But let's say the year before, the teacher who might have taught the same subject might look like, sound like, or act like anything that might call that student's attention back to that teacher. They're not even hearing you anymore. They're hearing you in an echo of what they've experienced prior to you. So part of the work of culture responsive teaching, part of the work of being an effective educator is lowering the stress enough of lowering the amygdala hijack that happens in our students so that when they come in, they know this is a space of learning. They know that this is a space of even if they take a risk and they blow it, that it's a safe space for them to be able to take that risk. I think often we find that students are unable to take the risk um, simply because they have not put themselves in position, right? Or because they feel like taking that risk will put them in a position where they will be ostracized or judged. And so our work as educators is to be able to combat that. So if you're listening still in chat, um, part part of our work that I want to call us to is the way that we can be former terrible teachers is to be honest about our shortcomings, is to be honest about the areas where we want to improve, to have a vision for what that looks like. One of the joys that I've had this year is coaching a teacher who's in my building who has been in education for almost as long as I've been alive and has learned something new this year and has so much joy about it. She's a math teacher. She is phenomenal. And in her classroom, she was against the cooperative learning small group activities that we were trying to push our teachers to do. But she embraced it. She took a learner stance and she put herself in position to learn a new skill. And so what you find is now um, what you find is that now she is students enjoying coming into her classroom. They're connecting with her and building with her in a very rich way that did not happen before. And so I want us to be able to take the risk so that we can learn a new skill, gain some valuable experiences. Because at the end of the day, right, our students deserve it. Our students deserve it. And too often we kind of put our students in positions where we ask them to take the risk and to assume all of it themselves. But we're not willing to do that for them. We're not willing to put ourselves out there. We're not willing to apologize. We're not willing to take the risk uh, and lead in that work. I want my students to see me fail. I want them to see me fail. I want them to see what it's like for me to be able to navigate that. Um, and I want them to see what it's like to own the areas in which I need to improve and to improve, to apologize, to assume responsibility and to get better, which I think is key. I think our guest is back. Let me add him back. Yo, yo.
I'm back, man. They don't pay teachers enough, man. Trying to gotta get his internet bill paid.
Yeah. You just had a video about that too, by the way, about like don't kill me in the comments, but
Yep,
it's not
yep.
just the pay, it's also the expectation. And I'd love to I'd
Hmm.
love to go back to that conversation, but for those who are just logging in, I'm talking with my brother Daryl Williams Jr. and we're talking about the confessions of a former terrible teacher. Um, and I was asking you to unpack the analogy that you gave recently about the tree, branches, and leaves as it pertains
Yeah,
to the transformation from a terrible teacher to a great one. If you could take us away, sir.
yeah, man. And if anybody was here before I got disconnected, that was a crazy cliffhanger. I
Wow.
felt that thing. I was So if you're sticking around, I got you. I promise I'm gonna deliver. All right, so you'll see why I use the tree in just a second. It is powerful because what when I was a struggling teacher, what I did so often was I looked at other people. So, like I said, I'm not somebody who struggled with a lot of things growing up academically. I just was like good at things. So when I wasn't a good teacher, I was like, there's got to be a way to figure this thing out. I thought that the way to do that was by emulating other people in the building that I thought were being highly successful. So I would look at another teacher. I remember like Miss Heim or Coach B or Coach Bryant, and I would see what they were doing. And I was like, let me try to do that. So I would try to use their homework policies. I'll try to use their same exact call and responses. I remember Coach B was like, man, you gotta turn into the Hulk on them. Y'all see me, man. I'm not Hulk material. Like I'm smiling all the time and stuff. So, but I would try these strategies and they weren't working. So now when I'm trying these strategies and I see them working in somebody else's classroom, they're still not working in mine. The problem in my brain, like I said, didn't give myself enough grace. The problem wasn't the strategy. The problem was me. So I'm not good because I've seen this strategy work. But here's why I realized it wasn't working for me. And here's what I learned instead. When you think about what it takes to be an effective teacher, there are proven principles to effectively connect with students that have been working from the beginning of time, from Jesus' days until now, of what it takes to be an effective teacher. Now, if we base our instruction off of those principles, I want us to think about that as the trunk of the tree. Those principles are the trunk of the tree. Those are the proven principles. From the trunk, you then have branches. The branches are your unique special skills. That's what I didn't realize. I felt like I could be an effective teacher. I felt like I can do great things, but I didn't realize that there was something unique about me, something that set me apart, that made me different than everybody else. My own unique gifts and talents that I have that other people can't access and that I would be able to leverage to make my difference. So the branches are your special skills. Now, when you build off of proven principles and you match it with special skills, that's how you then can make an immense impact. And off of those branches are leaves. Those leaves are the strategies. So watch this. Based off of the principle, which is the trunk, you then you have different branches, different special skills in your unique special skills. Everybody could have different branches. Maybe somebody's like the Hulk, right? Maybe somebody's super organized. Maybe somebody's really type A. Maybe somebody's really laid back. Maybe somebody's really corny. Somebody's really goofy. Like there's so many different branches. And then off of those branches, still based off the same principles, that's where the leaves grow. That's what creates strategies. So I can create strategies from my classroom based off of proven principles matched with my special skills. That's how we create strategies, which again are the leaves. But the issue is that so often new teachers pack leaves. They just get a whole bunch of strategies. They pack leaves and end up why they are packing up and leaving education because you're pulling strategies that could potentially be from somebody else's branch. And that's exactly what I was doing. When they were telling me to be the Hulk, to hit them with that look, I didn't have the look. I don't have the hook. I don't have that. Like, people are not afraid of me, which is, is good. I'm not saying I want people to be afraid of me. They're not. So I was taking that strategy or that leaf off of a different branch. What I needed to do was find my branch, and that's kind of the analogy that I would use. So what I teach now are those 6 proven principles of effective instruction, the trunk, and I help teachers find their branch so that they can create their own leaves, create their own strategies that are going to be effective in their classroom.
I love the analogy because it's almost like we are, certain trees can't grow in certain climates, right? They
That's
need
true
a
too.
different type of care, a different type of nurture, um, and a different um, amount of sunlight, so on and so forth. Like, I used to get myself in trouble thinking I had a green
Mm,
thumb early on before my grandfather sat me down and got me right, because
yeah.
I wouldn't read the little card that would come with the plant or whatever it was, if it was a tree or a plant, because
Mm,
that card would tell you how much sunlight, where it needs to be planted, how much you need to water it, what food it needs, so on and so forth. And I think what happens is when we're not engaging along the lines of, like you said, those proven practices, um, and then moving into that unique skill set. Like, if we don't do enough work on the
yeah.
branch, then the leaves are going to be trash anyway, because all we're trying to do is replicate the same thing. And I don't want a carbon copy of me. Like, I want you
Woo.
to be your best version of you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Um, and so
Yeah, absolutely. I know what you mean, man.
so talk to me about how, for you, knowing what you know now, if you were in a coaching session with yourself, where would you start? What would be a key thing that you would offer to yourself to help along the lines of those proven practices that you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, I would definitely. It's funny, like you said earlier. Hindsight is like the best teacher. I would honestly give him the book 99% of Human, 1% Amazing. The book that I recently wrote and released. And even in that book, I say I wrote this book for my former self. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of times people think when you're producing content, or when you are trying to reach somebody, or even as a business owner, you have your avatar, you the person that you're speaking to, and you imagine this person as you are creating content and curating information, or marketing. And I literally, when I was sitting down, I asked myself, what did Daryl Williams Jr. need to know in 2014, when he was in the rough Title I school, coming right out of college, feeling like he knew he was called to this work, but feeling extremely ineffective and wondering what his next steps were. Here's the answer. And that's literally what the
Mm,
whole book teaches. So that's the resource that I would physically give him, because the book teaches you your your teacher identity. Your teacher
yeah.
identity, or your teacher ID, is these 4 IDs. One, it helps you to identify your dream. Then it helps you to illuminate your differences. Then it helps you to ignore your doubters. And finally, it helps you to improve your data. So that process is what I learned that I needed to go through in order to really find my teacher ID and to really truly be effective. Right. And so that is the first thing I'll do. Like I said earlier, starting with the vision, identifying the dream. What even is the outcome that I want for students? Right. That way I first have to identify my dream so that I can live it out in every class every day. Then I have to illuminate my differences so I can leverage my uniqueness to make the impact that only I can. I tried to hide the things that made me unique when I really should have highlighted them and leveraged them to make a difference.
Yeah.
Then ignoring my doubters so I can fortify my mindset against the limiting beliefs that told me I wasn't capable and I wasn't good enough to do this thing. And then lastly, improving my data by mastering the 6 principles, like I said, the trunk of that tree, the 6 principles of effective instruction, and learning how to master those skills so that we can improve student achievement data.
The illuminating differences is major, for me when I think about them, because I'll give you an example. Like, in my building, as part of
Mhm.
the distinctive, a part of one of the things that we have to do is match a new teacher with a tenured teacher, right? We have to match them as a mentor.
Okay. Yeah.
And one of the teachers that came in that's new, classroom management, just it's let's just say it's developing. Okay.
For sure. Yeah.
Um, I think I think that she came in and she had an idea of what she wanted to do. But it was the big balloon versus, hey, be your unique self in this
Mm,
499 row. Okay.
got it.
Um,
Yeah.
and so doing that for a certain amount of time and now trying to dial it back is going to be difficult. So that's where she's at. Well, the teacher she's matched with,
Mm,
like, her strength is classroom management. You don't play in this
okay.
teacher's class. Like, that's just her. But it's because it's her unique skill set. It's how she approaches
For sure.
the
Yeah.
work she does. And so asking the new teacher to emulate what this teacher's doing is a no-go because she can't, like,
Hmm.
they're not the same. And what winded up
Yeah.
happening
Yeah.
is there was almost a disconnect between the mentor and the mentee because like you're talking about, the leaves were handed. And she's like, "Yeah, I can't do that though. Like I I don't know how to do that.
Hmm.
What you're
Hmm.
doing. I don't even know how you do that."
Yeah.
Um and so instead of giving and nurturing and producing leaves fit to those unique skill sets, to those differences, we almost try to retrofit what somebody else is doing, and then we cause such a disservice to
Absolutely.
the teacher and the classroom. Um,
Yeah.
so so let me ask you this: for a teacher who's new, like the teacher I described, how does one
Yeah.
begin to illuminate their difference? What should they be looking to do outside of buying your book? Let's put that out there. Outside of buying your book, what can they do
For sure.
alongside that to help illuminate their differences?
Yeah. So for illuminate the differences, they can get the ebook. Nah.
There it is. Plug it.
um, actually, I actually do have the ebook, My Zone of Excellence, but helping them identify the zone of excellence. So I always, I'm always going to start off with identification. So in order for you to be able to live in your zone of excellence, which I call it, noticing those special skills, in order to live in your zone of excellence, you first have to identify what it is. And it's funny, I was just talking to somebody about it literally earlier today. Sometimes it's really hard when you living in your own brain are asked to define what it is that makes you different because you don't know enough about everybody else to know what sets you apart. So
Hmm.
I didn't know what my strengths and talents were because to me it's just innate. It's just who I am, right? But other
Yeah.
people can see that, whatever that thing is, and they'll say, "Oh man, that's so cool." And I learned that the things that can be obvious to you can also be amazing to somebody else. So how do you even unpack the things that set you apart? I like to ask yourself a couple of questions, right? One question that you're going to ask yourself is, what do you do that often garners praise from others? All right, this is the ebook kind of walks you through this whole process. What are others consistently praising you about, praising you for? What are people asking you for advice about? That's another question to ask yourself. Another question that you can ask yourself is, what is something that comes easy to you that is often a struggle for other people? That one, sometimes it's hard, but if you take your time and think about it, or use Chat GPT to help you out, little some AI softwares, you'll like, what are some of the things that other people are struggling with? For us, I'm assuming it's public speaking. Why? Because it's something that we effortlessly do, and something that so many people are afraid of. How often do you have a conversation with somebody that's like, I can never get up in front of people and talk, right? And
Yeah.
I was like, I do that all the time. I love it. Conversations like this and getting in front of and getting in front of people is where I feel the most energized, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that's in my zone of excellence. And then another question to ask yourself is, what are the things that if you can never do these things again, you would feel incomplete? So now you start putting these things together. The questions I just asked you, take some think time and go through that. And it starts to bring out of you the things that set you apart. All right. So maybe you're more relaxed and chill, and you build strong relationships. All right. So if that is the case, when you're using strategies for you, it's not going to be like a high energy type of thing. Man, I have this one teacher in my school that is just consistently on. Amazing for her, but consistently on, where all you hear in her classroom is her voice. She's consistently positively narrating students, meaning like when they're doing something right, she's calling them out. She's consistently calling them to track the speaker. All you hear is her voice going. She's consistently celebrating students. It takes a lot, but she's consistently high energy. So if I were to tell somebody who is just more cool, more laid back, more relaxed to use this strategy, they're gonna be like, man, I can't do that. Right. But that doesn't mean that you're ineffective. That just means that your approach looks a little bit different. So your
Right.
approach, still having high expectations, your approach would be to make sure you clearly communicate the directions, because the clearer you
Right.
communicate the directions, the less you then have to speak. So I would teach that person how to clearly communicate the directions, check for understanding, make sure the students got it, and then release them to do the thing that they're supposed to do. Right. So there's
Right.
different approaches based off of who you are as a person, matching your special skills. So that's why at first you have to take some time to figure out, what are my special skills and the things that make me unique? What's my personality type and how am I showing up on a regular basis? So now that we can create strategies that are going to work for you.
One of the things that I'm going to say, I can see a direct correlation between the work that I do to um, learn and grow in and of myself and how that affects what I do in the classroom. Right. So, for example,
Mhm.
um, I am a recovering perfectionist. Just am. I know that about
Yeah.
myself. Um, and what that has allowed me to do is to know when my judgment or my um, feedback for someone else, whether it be an adult or a student in my building, is coming from a place of my own need to or try to being, this mythical perfect, right? If that is part
Mhm.
of what I'm bringing to the table, it's going to affect the kind of um, coaching, the kind of affirmation, the kind of feedback that I'm
Absolutely.
giving,
Absolutely.
right? And knowing that about myself has helped me become a better leader, a better servant, um, a better educator. What do you
Mm-hmm.
recommend teachers do, right, in this path of, I'm going to say, self-discovery to begin to kind of unpack those layers within themselves that kind of naturally come out in the classroom, because you can't ever hide who you truly are. It's going to come out in the classroom, and the way our students are set up, they're going to sniff it out a mile away. So how can we help teachers better um, journey down that lane of self-discovery so that they can leverage it in the classroom?
Yeah. You got to finding your uniqueness and finding who you are. You first have to start with understanding who you are as a person. And when you understand who you are as a person, then you can let that person reign supreme, if you would.
Hmm. Mhm.
When I first stepped into the classroom, I didn't. I told you I came in as a black male educator, 21 years old, right out of college, and I was thinking that the way that I would be able to connect with my students would be to just be cool. I'm going to be just like them. And
Yeah.
if I could be honest, I didn't really connect with my students outside of the color of our skin. So
Yeah.
growing up, I was the type of student that I always said I grew up in a rough area in Staten Island, New York. I grew up and it was a really, really rough area, but what was going on in my zip code wasn't going on in my household. So although there was crime, poverty, bad things going on, my parents never like let me be exposed to that kind of stuff. I was like very, very, very sheltered. So when I was in school, I just remember not being able to connect with other people, like I mentioned earlier, because of my differences. So they would be talking about, like the music they were listening to, and I was like, oh, I don't listen to secular music. Or they would be talking about the shows they're watching. I was like, oh, my parents don't let me watch SpongeBob. Right? Like they would
Yeah.
be talking
Yeah.
about all these things, and I just didn't connect. So
Yeah.
then I remember getting fast forward, 10, 15 years. Now I'm trying to figure out these students and trying to figure out how to connect with them. And I look like them, but if I could be honest, we don't have a similar upbringing. I don't really with every single student. I definitely don't. So now I'm trying to figure figure out how to be like them. And it's almost like cultural appropriation, which is crazy because again, we are the same skin color, but now I'm trying to like play music that they're into, so I like using music in my classroom. So I'm like, what are the music that the students are into? Let me, blur out the music, or let me blur out, find the clean versions, right? I'm trying to, use kind of their slang because I'm thinking I need to be like them in order to connect with them. And to your point, that's what the students are seeing through. So man, I'm looking back on my first year self again, just thinking about how silly I looked. So again, 21 years old, I'm like, I know you've been hearing me speak this whole entire time. You see my diction is a little like clean and clear. So I'm trying to like speak in slang, like, yeah, y'all. So here's what we finna do in class today. Like, because I'm thinking this is what it's gonna take to connect with them. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, and I remember one time somebody said something. I don't even remember who it was. I wish I can give them credit. But one time I was here's what shifted it for me. I was doing this. The classroom reward was that if they got X amount of points, whatever, they would allow me to see the D-Lo. I would dance and learn how to dance and perform the dance of the D-Lo shuffle, which in 2014 was dance. It was like you got to learn some steps. It was like whipping nene and a whole bunch of different stuff, right? So
Yeah.
I remember I told myself I would learn that dance so I could do it for them. And I said something in class. They were like, I was like, I'm gonna do the D-Lo shuffle. And I was like, everybody knows that dance, everybody knows that song, everybody, whatever. The person pulled me aside later and she was like, you can't just assume that because it's a classroom full of Black students that everybody knows that song. And like she said it, whatever she said more beyond that, and it was deeper. I mean, she said more, and then it hit me. I was like, whoa, hold up. Like but I would have been that student. Like I would have been that student where you
Right.
said, oh, everybody knows this song. And I'd been like, not me, but feeling bad. So I was like, hold up, why am I trying to be somebody I'm not? Like
Mm.
that's just not me, not who I am. I don't need to appropriate who they are in order to impact them, or who I think they are in order to impact them. Let me be me. So then I did. Like literally everything switched up. And who I am is who I then was. When I was smiling, the music I was playing was upbeat, Afro beats music, and that's like, Mr. Williams, that sounds weird. This is what I like. I'll play gospel music when appropriate. They're like, oh, you listen to gospel? I do. Right? Mr. Williams, why don't you curse? I don't. And I'm really like showing them the example of who I am. When I'm speaking, you talk funny, whatever it is, this is who I am. And again, when they start see the authentic version of me and I start weaving that into my classroom, then I was able to start seeing myself making an impact, not trying to show up as somebody I'm not just to impact them, but realizing that who I am is how I will impact, that I'm enough. All that I am is all that I need. And realizing that once I let my differences live, that's how I was able to make a difference in the students' lives.
I think that is major, and I hope that those who would listen to this get that nugget, because many of us fall victim to presenting counterfeit um, versions of ourselves to our students, and really miss out on the key of authenticity. Like, if you don't listen
Yeah.
to hip hop, cool. Like, you don't have to listen to hip hop to connect at all. You don't have to,
Mhm,
like, and
mhm.
that's the part where I'm like, when I'm teaching about, or helping people to understand what culturally responsive teaching is. A lot of times people think it's the handshakes when the kids come in, it's the
Yeah.
the music with the students creating their own rhyme or rap or whatever that they see certain schools doing, and I'm like, nah, that's that's not it. Not to say that those things are wrong, but that's not it. Like, there is always a culture in which is being responded to in a classroom, school, or whatever. The question is, whose culture are we going to respond to? And I think, to
Yep.
illuminate your point, it is it is so key for us to know, and to know that what you said, all that I am is all that I need. Like, allow your kids to see the real
All that I
you. If
am is
you
all that I need.
that if you are an equestrian, you ride horses, wonderful. Let them see that side of you. Let them see, what you truly bring to the table. And
Hmm.
then as you bridge the gap between, who you are and the content, who you are, and the argumentative essay you're trying to teach, who you
Yeah.
are, and the equation, who you are, and the science experiment, whatever it is, kids will pick up on the authenticity and then buy into what it is that you're trying to do. But too often we present this counterfeit version of ourselves,
Yeah.
hope that it connects with the student, and students are wise enough to know when you're not giving them the real you. And if you're not going to be authentic enough
Hmm.
to give me the real you, then why am I going to
Yeah.
buy into anything you say?
Right.
Yeah,
Or again, we take strategies. All the things that you were mentioning right there. We have handshakes and raps and songs. Like that's somebody else's strategy from somebody else's branch. Right. The principle is build relationships. How do you
that
build
part.
relationships? That's a question that I'm literally asking. Like, how, when the friends that you currently have, how did you build relationships with them? Were you handshaking and high fiving? Okay, cool, do that kind of stuff. But if you're an active listener that does great at listening, and you talk to your students, maybe a strategy that you should, or you talk to your friends to make them friends, maybe a strategy that you should use would be spending 3 minutes a day talking to a different student, or spending 3 minutes, just speaking to a student that has nothing to do with school,
Yeah,
because apparently you're a great communicator, right? So
right.
strategies are great, but I want you to go down to principles before you just pick up a strategy.
That part. That part. Brother, I want to honor your time as we round out our time here. I know that you're doing all the things, author, speaker, educator, but you also have something coming up on April 21st that I would love for folks to know about. So please tell people what's going on.
Yeah, April 21st. I'm super excited, man. My brother in the work, as well as some of my sisters in the work. We are having a virtual summit where we are helping teachers learn those proven principles so they can match with their special skills so they can have an immense impact. It's called New Teacher Big Impact, the virtual summit. It is this Sunday. You can join me, myself, and Dr. Richard Warren, as well as Tracy Ann Lafayette and Helena Haynes, who are super powerful presenters who decided we're going to come together and we're going to help teachers last to end the year strong and start the year right. That's the goal. We're going to end the year strong and start the year right. So next school year is your best school year. Learn how to match these proven principles with your special skills so that you can make an immense impact.
I love it. Where can they register? How can they tap in? Where do they go?
Yep, linked in the bio, or you can go to newteacherbigimpact.com/summit. Newteacherbigimpact.com /summit. Or you can look anywhere you find me on socials, Daryl Williams Jr. No, just Daryl Williams. And you'll see
Yeah,
it linked in my bio. But yeah, if you comment the word summit on any of my posts, it'll automatically be sent to you. My AI bots will send that to you within seconds. So if you don't feel like going to the link in the bio, go to my Instagram, my Facebook, whatever, and write the word summit somewhere, and it'll come to you. Don't worry.
that's dope, man. Listen, before we head out and before you offer any final thoughts and words, I want to say, like I said, I connected with your platform for a little bit before I even reached out. But just, I love the work that you're doing, brother. I love, for me, and the work that I do, and some of our stuff obviously overlaps, and we kind of shine in the same ways. But I
Oh yeah.
existed in a space where I kind of centered on like paradigms, like this is the mindset around it, here's the big picture item that I want you to get. And what I love about your work is it kind of challenged even me to think about, like, wait a minute, how can I make what I'm trying to, the big picture item I'm trying to convey to educators, how can I put that in a tangible,
Mhm.
actionable strategy? Because you do that very well. And so I commend your work to so many
Mhm.
people. Even in my building, there's some teachers that I've sent your stuff to, like, listen, I need you to go check my brother out. So I love the work that you're doing, brother, and I just want to encourage you
Got
to
you.
keep on going.
Hey, I appreciate it. Same to you, man. Of course, I had to stalk your LinkedIn for a minute, but yeah, I love the work you're doing. I feel like we'll connect again, even off
For sure.
platform, to work some things together.
For sure, brother. I appreciate it, man. Any final thoughts for folks as we tap out and let them go on to their evenings, before before we get out of here? What final words you have? Some final thoughts and things like that.
Yeah, man. I heard you got excited when we were illuminating differences. So let me just drive that point home. I just always like to say that similarities can't allow us to make a difference. Only differences can do that. Similarities allow us to connect. Our differences allow us to impact. I want you to take a moment and just think about the things that allow us, the things that are similarities. We blink, we breathe, we swallow, we eat, right? Like, that's not impacting anybody. But your differences, the things that make you unique, the things about you that nobody else can do, the way you view the world, and based off of your unique experiences, your beliefs, and the things that make you amazing, that's how you're going to leave your mark on this earth. So make sure that you let your differences live so you can make a difference in somebody else's life.
Boom. Can't think of a better way to end our time, brother. Thank you again for sharing time and space with us. And I hope folks, if you are not following, please tap into my brother Daryl's Facebook. He's on LinkedIn. I mean, all the things. If you go to his website, his link is there to be able to connect with him. He's on Instagram as well. And connect to the summit, April 21st. And I'm sending some teachers your way for sure. So thankful for the work that you're doing, brother. And to the next time we collaborate, man. Let's keep pushing.
Let's do it. Appreciate you, Bobby.